So there may have been, maybe Francis and Anthony would have discussed these martyrs and what each of them had reflected on. If I were to imagine Francis of Assisi and Anthony of Padua somehow in a setting which probably unlikely, may never have happened. If these two Franciscans were sitting down together, first of all, one would be older and maybe a bit more seasoned. Francis, been through a lot more. Anthony, a young man who wanted to be a martyr, who heard about Franciscan martyrs and who then came to be a follower of Francis through the example of those martyrs. Then you have Francis, who heard about those early martyrs, the same ones in Morocco that St. Anthony heard about. But Francis, I think, may have felt a little differently about their approach to Islam, which was a kind of an in-your-face, here's the gospel, and maybe not as respectful to the Muslims they met, those early martyrs. Francis, in fact, after having himself had an encounter with Islam and the Sultan in Egypt, wrote that we need to be respectful. We need just to go and live among them. So there may have been, maybe Francis and Anthony would have discussed these martyrs and what each of them had reflected on. Anthony was inclined to theology. Francis was not a theologian, although for his time he probably was educated to some degree. He was not ignorant, he was not unlettered. So he would have had things to talk about. But I think Anthony might have been a little more, intellectual in his approach to things than Francis would have been. So you have two different personalities. Then you have, as I said before, you have an experienced and maybe a little newer friar. An older friar talking to a newer friar. You want to be respectful to him. You want to endorse his enthusiasm. But you might have done to sit back and say, well, when he is around a few more years, he may have some different things to say about things. That's my guess for a hypothetical meeting between Francis and Anthony. I think they would have had a nice time. They would have embraced each other as brothers, as Francis wanted to always do. And I think Anthony would have responded that way.